We'll start with the Banana Republics.
Hey kids, do you like fashionable, high-quality apparel at an affordable price? Well, too bad, cause that's not what we're talking about today. I'm gonna learn you all a thing or two about the real banana republics. Our story begins during the turn of the 20th century in Central and South America. Agriculture's kind of a big deal right now. You've got a ton of little plantations all over the place growing bananas, sugar, pineapples, that kind of thing. And they're doing alright for themselves, no big deal. But then refrigeration happened and it changed everything.
Yeah.
Because now produce could be kept fresh for way longer in transit, meaning the fruit companies could suddenly open up their business to the international market, their biggest new trade partner being the United States. This massive opportunity gave rise to three main companies, known as the United Fruit Company, Coyamel Fruit Company, and the Vaccaro Bros.
I only knew
By
the first
growing,
one.
shipping, and selling fruit, these three firms made just obscene amounts of money, a lot of which went towards buying out smaller family-owned farms and
I bet.
plantations. This allowed them to make even obscener amounts of money, until eventually the only competition that remained was each other. And then shit got real. The year is 1910. One of the companies I mentioned, Coyamel, was doing most of its business in the country of Honduras, when the president of Honduras, Miguel Davila, decided to give a land grant to the Vaccaro Bros in exchange for helping to build some roadways. In doing so, they basically stole a bunch of Coyamel's potential plantations and gave them to a competitor. So Samuel Zamuri, owner of Coyamel, said to himself, "Dang, I hate those guys. If only there was some way for a guy like me to significantly influence the world around him for his own personal gain."
He does.
Wait a minute. So he used a portion of his McDuck-esque fortune to hire a mercenary army, which he gave to one of his friends, former Honduran President Manuel Bonilla. And together, they overthrew the entire fucking government of Honduras. Yeah.
I think Honduras was the first country to be considered a banana republic. And that's because of an author who wrote a collection of short stories detailing his experiences there, and I believe that's where the term was coined. Cabbages and Kings, it's called, by the author O. Henry. Or is it P. Henry? I always do that with this guy. It's O. Henry and P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. But that is unrelated to this.
Should have called it Coyamel. Anyway, Bonilla took power and gave very generous concessions to Coyamel and United as thanks. But then America saw this, and they were like, "Hey, that's not very freedom of you, young man." To which Zemery replied, "It's okay, we're gonna help this country succeed. After all, politics and business are essentially the same thing." Well, I suppose it's not our place to be policing the governments of other nations, yet. Still though, maybe— Oh, also, nanners. Alright, I'm sold, do what you want. So with their interests secured, the businesses continued to thrive and expand. But since they got cut so many breaks by the government, very little of their commerce
many.
actually ended up benefiting Honduras as a whole. In fact, the national debt of Honduras got so bad that the government ended up not being able to perform a lot of its functions. So in response, the three fruit companies stepped in and said, "No worries, we got this," and decided to basically build the nation's infrastructure for them, including roads, railways, shipping lines, telegraphs, telephone lines, radio towers. They even switched the whole country off to the US dollar. Keep in mind, this wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. It was mostly just to make their own businesses function more efficiently. But it was helpful either way. Anyway, now, not only did they have total power over their plantations, but also a monopoly over nearly every major industry in the country. Many other Central American nations soon followed this pattern, creating a corrupt sort of symbiosis whereby the fruit companies get huge tax breaks and land grants in exchange for a modernized infrastructure and payoffs to the rich minority. And so, the banana republics were born. Sounds like a pretty sweet gig, right? And it was. For the upper 5% of the populations who happen to hold some direct share in the plantations or shipping lines. For your average Jose, though, life mostly consisted of working on land that wasn't even theirs in exchange for dirt-poor wages.
At one point, the United Fruit Company wasn't even paying their employees cash. They were giving them vouchers that could only then be used on their own plantations.
So that's how things were for like a decade and a half. At some point, Coyamel was bought out by United, but then Zamore became the owner of the whole thing, somehow, and the Vaccaro Company was renamed as Standard Fruit. Then one day, in 1944, the country of Guatemala had a democratic revolution, and the newly elected leader, Juan José Arevalo, wasn't happy with how the companies treated his people. So he implemented several reforms, like a minimum wage law and universal suffrage. And while the populace got a lot of benefit out of this, United Fruit most certainly did not. Because more rights for their workers means less profits for the business as a whole. Then Guatemala got a new president, Jacobo Arbenz, and he continued these reforms. And United continued to get the metaphorical shaft until finally, in 1953, they decided to go to the USA for help.
Oh, Eisenhower. Yo, what's up? This Jacobo guy, he's making us pay minimum wages. Well, that doesn't sound very good for business. That's not all, though. He's also taking our unused land and giving it back to the people. Does that sound familiar? Oh dear. You don't think. By the way it's looking, Dwight, I'd say he's a dirty, oh god, collectivizing, no, commie. Commie! Commie!
It's loud.
Yeah, go get him,
So that
boy.
fear of communism is used a few times then.
Holy shit, you actually did it. World Star! And from that point onward, Guatemala was ruled by a series of US-backed dictatorships, all the way up until 1996.
Whoa.
This kind of situation happened in several other places and times as well, almost always driven by some combination of red fear and yellow love. I won't give any more details for the sake of time, but that doesn't mean they weren't big deals. So you might be wondering, where did these companies go? Surely the clan of banana shenanigans can't still be around today. Well, that's where you're wrong. They're still in operation, just under different names. Standard Fruit changed their name in 1991 to become none other than Dole Food Company. You know, when I was a
They're
kid, I
Dole?
used to play a lot of Super Monkey Ball, and I used to wonder, what kind of cruel tyrant would just stick an ape in a ball for their own amusement? Well, now I know.
So Dole's been at the top of the fruit game pretty much since their inception then, because they remain one of the largest fruit and veg companies that operate internationally. And now that I think about it, I don't know if I've been to a country that doesn't sell Dole. Now I'll have to give that serious thought. If you're from a country that doesn't have Dole products, let me know which one it is.
Those bastards. As for United, one day in 1976, their CEO decided he couldn't take the heat anymore, so he jumped out the fucking window. That's a real thing, look it up. Then some other guy bought the company and renamed it to, drumroll please,
What is it?
Chiquita Banana. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The face you
Oh.
once knew as an innocent, fun-loving dancer-slash-fruit merchant is actually a ruthless tyrant who overthrows democracies and undermines basic human rights for her own profit. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching.
Okay. This was a subscriber request from a channel called Salmonella Academy, so I'll make sure to link them down below. And although it was a very oversimplified explanation of the Banana Republics, I still did find it informative. So Eisenhower was there at the end of the story. Roosevelt played a role in the whole debacle as well. And actually, the CIA and the US government had a very heavy hand in the Banana Republics, which I would be remiss not to note. US forces invaded Honduras multiple times. And then at one point in the story, the United Fruit Company was so threatened or unhappy, we'll say, with the idea that their Colombian workers wanted to, what I'd call modern day unionize, but on a smaller scale. They just wanted better working conditions. That they went to the United States government, used that fear of communism. The United States government then went to the Colombian government, told them to sort it out. And that led to the Banana Massacre of 1928, where many protesters died. And it's hard to say exactly how many protesters because it varies wildly depending on the source that you're reading. But that's an interesting piece of history worth looking into from multiple perspectives. And that could be said for any piece of history. I think that the Banana Republics are usually mentioned during an intro to geopolitics sort of class. Unless you're like me and you have a Nicaraguan grandpa who explained this whole thing to you instead of giving you a bedtime story. But honestly, I don't even like bananas. It's a consistency thing. I much prefer a juicy peach. Although I did want to try one of those blue bananas, if you've ever seen those. And now that we're talking about Banana Republics here, I always found it kind of odd that the company would name themselves Banana Republic. It's almost as though they're banking on the fact that some people don't know what a Banana Republic is. But maybe that can be explained away by a double meaning. I've never read up on it. I don't know if Banana Republic is a double entendre. And actually, I don't think that Gap named them that. They had that name before. They used to be called Banana Republic and Safari Company, something like that. It's very odd. I'll find the real name and I'll put it somewhere here. But Gap owns Banana Republic, right? And then Old Navy and a few other companies. That's really a tangent that had nothing to do with this. So, for a literary recommendation, Cabbages and Kings by O. Henry. I think that book is classified under historical fiction, but it does still give a good history of banana republics. And I really like the writing style because it's a collection of short stories interlinked. So I'll try to find a free audiobook version for you. If I can, you'll find that in the description. If not, you'll just find the title. And if you think that there was anything that this video missed or they should have gone over, please feel free to add down below as well. That's all I've got. So thank you for watching with me, and I'll catch you next time.